Hey, Kate, it's Ryan with Curate. It's good to see you. Great. Thanks for hopping on here with us.
Oh, thank you for asking me. It's great to see you and be here with you and your community. Thank you for having me.
For sure. Well, when I saw the email blast from SAF a few weeks back, and I was just coming out of, my wife got me one of those like saltwater float things for Christmas. And so I was just coming out of that, got in my vehicle, sat down, and I saw this like email on PPP, and I about flipped out because it finally felt like, someone sent a letter to Congress and Congress actually read it, especially for our customers that are dramatically affected by this. So first off, I just want to say thank y'all for communicating that information, because that led to a lot of efforts we're doing to help spread this. So thanks for that so much.
You are welcome. We knew the floral community would want to know about this. It's so important. So you're welcome.
For sure. Well, and again, thanks for hopping on here. We are, we're going to be using this from a live broadcast, but we're also going to be just saving this as a resource for anyone in the future who has questions about this process. Again, thank you to everybody who is hopping onto the screen share as well, or onto the webinar as well. We are today, Kate and I are going to be talking a little bit about the second round of PPP, or as we affectionately call it, PPP2. And we're going to be talking about, what is it? What things are happening? Do you really need to apply? Is it kind of just same song, second verse? We've heard a lot of people are discouraged from the first time around, and it's a question of, should you apply now? Is it worth it to apply now? So I always like to joke around that we're not coming from an accountant perspective, like you need to talk to your accountant about these questions. But at the same time, I really appreciate SAF being willing to jump out and say, let's give you what information we have, for sure. So if that works, Kate, let's just jump in. So what is PPP? What's a great way to explain PPP?
Well, I think the best way to explain PPP is that it's free money. But more specifically, it is the Paycheck Protection Program, and it's part of the second round of the stimulus relief package that was just passed by Congress just a few days before Christmas. It has $284 billion in it.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so when I saw y'all's email that came out about, hey, here's all the differences that are happening with this new round of PPP versus the previous round, I get really excited because based on the cursory view of it, it seemed to fit our customers pretty heavily. What's different about this round versus the last round?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are so many differences. I mean, first, some really big differences in terms of big numbers are, the size of businesses in terms of number of employees that you can have that can apply. They've actually reduced it from being available for up to 500 employees to 300. Not that that affects a lot of people in our floral community, but that's one big difference. Also, the amount that can be borrowed, you can borrow up to $2 million. Before it was up to $10 million. And that is really because it is a smaller pool of money. There was about $660 billion in that first round. And now, as I said, there's about $285 billion in there now. But although this doesn't necessarily seem like it, there definitely was this conscious effort to funnel the dollars to those who need it most this time around. You probably read some of the stories with the last round about these huge corporations getting the loans. It was kind of frustrating to read about that. This time, you need to show that you had a 25% drop in gross revenue in any quarter in 2020 compared to the same period in 2019. And that was not a provision in the first round. You did not have to show a loss of business. It also, this second round is also earmarking specifically a portion of the funds for both first or second time borrowers with 10 or fewer employees. That's a brand new distinction as well. And they're also earmarking some loans of less than $250,000 for employers in low income areas.
Got it. And that makes sense. And so, so basically what you're saying is there's less of a chance that, I know the first round that they ran out of money, I think they refunded it, added some more funds to it, but it just, several people were just told, sorry, there's no money. And so there's less of a chance of that because it's limiting it down to the people who were affected and who need it the most.
Right, right. In theory, your chances should be better this time around. Right.
Right. Okay. And so, so from that perspective, who qualifies? Like, how does a florist or know, hey, I qualify for this loan?
Right. So first you need to have a payroll. It is designed to relieve payroll. And so you do need to have a payroll of some sort. And you also, this is more in, in terms of how you can get forgiveness, but you need to spend 60% of the funds on payroll and 40% can be spent on other qualified expenses, which, by the way, is also an upgrade and improvement over the previous round. In the previous round, you had to spend 75% on your payroll, and then 25% you could spend on either interest on covered mortgage obligations, rent, or utilities, or all of the above. And so now you just 60% on payroll, but that other 40%, you have way more options on how you can spend that money. It's not just on, mortgage and rent and utilities. You can also spend it on, several other areas, which I can get into those if you want to. But to answer your question, you need to have a payroll and show the loss, be able to show the loss. Those are two big qualifiers there.
Makes sense. And we'll jump into a little bit deeper into that question about what other categories later on. But we recommend, and this is what you and I were just chatting about earlier, like, even if you're not sure what constitutes as a payroll, you need to talk to your accountant. Like, if you were affected by this, at least talk to them. There's no harm in being able to have a conversation and figure out, there's many different company structures. At least have that conversation with them, because to your first point, Kate, it's free money. And I would rather be told no now than have found out it could have been a yes 3 months from now.
Right. That is excellent advice. Absolutely.
For sure. And to that point, I think one of the things that made me most excited with y'all's email blast that came out addressing that differences and that 60% on the payroll was that in the event industry, it was a huge complaint that I saw with the first version that said, there are no events. Like, what am I going to hire these people back to do? Right. There's nothing for them to do. And so they're kind of frustrated. It's like, I'm going to go through a process, have to do all this stuff, but they're getting less money from me than they are from unemployment, was the common line. And so I was excited because what you just said, that increase in the amount of 40% that can be spent on more items, that helps a ton.
Right. Absolutely. And another thing that I think will help everybody is the covered period. I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of the differences on the coverage period upon which your forgiveness eligibility is based. But before, it was just 8 weeks. You had an 8-week period, and they've extended that to anywhere. It can be as short as 8 weeks and as long as 24 weeks. That's immediately awesome. Following after the loan is received. So that's a big difference.
Right.
And really broadens how you can use that. And so you just need to, like, let's say you got your loan on February 15th. As long as your workforce is at its pre-February 15th level on the last day of the coverage period that you choose, that you designate, then there won't be any workforce reduction penalties.
Got it.
And we know in the event business, workforce levels change. It's a moving target, but this gives you more control over that.
That makes so much sense, especially with what you just said, where you're able to strategize. Can we do this in 8 weeks, or can we do this in 24 weeks? And you can make that based on your conversations with your accountant or your banker. You can make some strategic decisions there.
Right.
So one of the big things that a lot of people have asked is, hey, what if last year was my first year in business? I just got started up in January or March or something. And, obviously that does affect what I projected to do. Or maybe it was even 2018. Maybe I got started in late 2018 or 2019, excuse me. What does that look like for those people who were really in their first year of business last year?
Right. Well, from my understanding, when you were, when you started in business is not an issue. I mean, you do need to show a loss, a year over year loss. So, well, it becomes an issue. You can't show, 2020 versus 2019. So I correct myself there. So if you
Kind of
do
hard.
just start, then that, from everything we've read, that is one of the qualifiers for forgiveness. Now, it doesn't mean you won't get the loan.
Sure.
It is a very low interest loan. And
Sure.
so it doesn't mean you won't get the loan. You just might not get all of it forgiven. So
That's an important point too, that I don't think we emphasize enough, is that it is a loan, it is forgivable, but for those people who do need this capital, they could still qualify for the loan. It's just we're talking about a combination of receiving the loan and forgiveness most of the time when we're talking about it.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. So we have seen this a lot, where one of our customers at Curate said, "Hey, I'm a retail florist. My wedding and events are down 300,000 this year, but my retail is up 74%." Right? Because everybody's stuck at home. They want to send gifts. They want to help express, make someone feel better who's feeling lonely or depressed. With this new round of PPP, how does it impact somebody who is heavily retail and a little bit of events versus heavily events and a little bit of retail? And what does that look like, that combination there?
So from our understanding of it, it's talking about gross revenue. And so it sounds like they're going to look at the total picture and see what that gross loss is, versus looking at a category of the business. But again, that's probably a question. And I ran this through our government relations team as well, because I was thinking about that. And it could be a question for your accountant as well. But on the surface, it appears that they're going to look at the total.
Got it.
Versus a category.
Got it. So there is a chance that somebody could have had a really bad Q2 is the worst for events. I was looking at some numbers before this call. It was absolutely the worst. I mean, but there's a chance that somebody could have had such a large Mother's Day in Q2 of last year that it actually, maybe didn't get them all the way up to their level, but it's above that 75%, right? And obviously you have to look at every quarter, but if I understand what you're saying, based on a precursory level, there's a chance somebody doing a significant amount more retail, the government would consider less affected than somebody who can show that every single quarter, or let me say any quarter, is less than 75%.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense then. So what does the loan cover? We talked a little bit about payroll, but obviously this is expanded a little bit. What else outside of maybe what the original one covered, does this new one cover?
Yeah, so many other categories. So first, if you think about anything that you're spending on software, business software. So that's your, event management software, your point of sale, cloud computing, if you do delivery, any kind of software you're using to facilitate that, tracking payroll expenses, human resources, sales, billing, accounting, any of that is covered with this. Also interesting is if you incurred any property damage costs related to vandalism or looting due to some of the things that were going on last year in our country, and those weren't covered by your insurance, you can use this loan to cover that, which we think is pretty interesting as well. So there's a property damage piece there, in other words. You can also use it to cover your supplier costs. So if you had to buy supplies that are essential to operations at the time, essential to your business at the time you bought them, and this is fresh, it's perishable, non-perishable, doesn't matter, or you bought it because it was part of a contract or a purchase order at any time before the covered period, then you can use it for that. Also, we know that there are some requirements that have been made by Department of Health and Human Services, Centers for Disease Control, Occupational Safety and Health Administration for how we need to change our businesses to get them ready for customers, to make them safe. Those costs are actually, you can use the loan to cover those costs as well. So let's say you had to shift your space around to allow your designers to have 6 feet in between them. And maybe you even had to buy some additional benches,
Right.
design benches, that would be covered.
That's very interesting. So as people are looking at these expenses and they're trying to determine like, where do I invest this money? The first question is, when do I get the money in the first place? What does the payout look like? What does that process look like?
So on this loan, we don't know yet because it hasn't happened. But
Okay.
I know from experience in the first round, if it's anything like the first round, the payout is pretty fast. It might depend on your bank and your relationship with your bank, but we know people who were applying, let's say in mid-April, and they were depositing, a check by mid-May.
Wow. Okay.
Easily within a month for some people. I'm not suggesting that was universal. It's just, this is very anecdotal. We didn't do any kind of surveying of our members on how many got loans and how that worked. So this is just purely anecdotal.
Right. So there's a chance, they're changing stuff up a little bit. There's a chance it could be longer, but there's also a chance that they've done this once before and they sort of got their ducks in a row, if you will. So that makes sense. And maybe it could be quicker, but you kind of just have to talk with your banker then and sort of get a feel of like, what does this look like for you all?
Definitely. And you may have also seen that in this this first period, we can't tell how long it's going to last, but they're really opening it up. Right now, it's just open to those like local community banks as well. So if hopefully you have a good relationship with your local community bank, because those are the institutions that can do this first period. I don't know if that's going to be a week, 2 weeks, a month. I'm not sure, but.
Right. Makes sense. I've, again, this is anecdotally, I've heard several banks are saying, hey, next week, several larger banks, hey, next week we have options for it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate. We did put up for those who are watching, on our blog post that we have on this, we did put up a list of the qualified financial institutions that are actually accepting applications as of January 11th. And so you want to go and check out that. We basically just pulled from the SBA all sorts of their sort of map tools that they have to see where they're at. And there really aren't a lot based on what we've seen. Like they are really limiting it down to those groups that did not get to be included as much last time around. But definitely check that out. Again, check with your bank and all that information, but there's a chance maybe you're already banking at one of those institutions. So to that point, I guess last big question before we start getting some audience questions, if someone doesn't qualify for this round of PPP, what other funding sources are available? Are there any other funding sources that are out there?
Yeah, there are. You might be familiar with the drawing a blank on the EIDL.
Oh, yeah. EIDL.
Right, with that, and that is also that's also an opportunity that's available. A loan advance, economic
incentive development loan,
economic injury disaster loan.
Yes.
Although I think there is an economic incentive development. I think that's another loan actually.
Too many EIDLs.
These economic injury disaster.
Got it.
Loan advances are available as part of the PPP, and you can also talk to your lending officer about that as well. These are really reserved for businesses who need them most, and I think you can get up to $10,000 per borrower. You need to be in a low-income community, have suffered economic loss greater than 30%.
Got it.
And employ less than 300 employees. And these are tax-free, which is great too. So that's something to look into. And there are apparently some of the funding has been directed to some other types of loans as part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act. And for these, I only have acronyms. CDFI is one of the loans and MDI is another one, but we're really recommending definitely check out the EIDL and other SBA 7A loan programs too. That is a loan program that is there for small businesses. It might not be forgivable or it's not forgivable, but it's maybe 3.5% interest, is something that I tend to hear. And so that could be something to really look into and talk to your lending institution or go directly to the SBA for that as well. There's a program called the Community Advantage Pilot Program that you could inquire about specifically as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. No, I really appreciate that. And I do think, again, based on the numbers we were looking at with our customers, I mean, a lot of people really were hurt by everything that's going on in a dramatic fashion by 50%. We ran the numbers for everybody watching. We ran the numbers of a select group of Curate companies, people who use our software and who were current customers from December of 2018 all the way to December of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And the comparison between 2019 and 2020 was 50%. A 50% drop in revenue. So if for those of you who are asking that question, if you are a Curate customer listening to this, you can actually go to your events report and just generate your events report for the 2 periods. And that can be information that you can hand over to your accountant. Obviously you have QuickBooks. QuickBooks is a great source if you're using that. I know a lot of our users don't have a QuickBooks account, but you can generate that out to be able to demonstrate, hey, here's how this affected me.
Right.
Right. So with that said, we got a few questions here from some of the audience. One of the questions that we have, and you and I chatted about this briefly earlier, but is, what if there is no payroll, or what if I haven't set up payroll with some payroll provider? Like, what does that look like if I'm more of a small business, self-employed, but I'm unsure of what constitutes?
Right. So you're self-employed without an obvious payroll.
Right.
I would not presume you're not going to be able to get this. I would definitely talk to your accountant and see if they're going to know. They're going to help you be able to figure out if you can find if there's a place in there for your particular model. I would really encourage you to do it.
Perfect. Okay, cool. And then another thing that we're seeing here, another question is, what's the formula to determine how much they qualify for? It doesn't sound like everybody gets the same amount. What's that formula that they use to figure out how much do we qualify for?
Right. It is 2.5 months of payroll.
Okay.
That has not changed from the previous. That's pretty much the exact same as the first round. Perfect.
Okay, cool. We have another question. I might be able to speak to this a little bit more. This question says, any chance you know if Square is going to be helping with PPP loans? I couldn't get a loan from my big bank last time and don't bank locally at all, so I had to go through them, but I haven't heard anything yet. Just wondering if you've heard anything. I have been in contact with Square. It sounds like they are actually going to be facilitating some of these loans, except they're going to be focusing on current customers first, is kind of the key thing that they've told me. And so I am still trying to find out more information from Square on that, and any other partner out there who's doing this. But that's just, I think that one came in on Facebook. So that one's hopefully a good answer on that one. It does sound like, based on my communication with them, they are doing it. Just if you're currently a processor with them, they'll be giving you priority.
Right, which makes sense, and that's probably how banks are prioritizing too. Certainly the community ones. So
exactly, makes sense. Another, and this is just a kind of a basic question, but we're seeing this question is, and it's good to have this because we have a lot of our florists who are they just started something, right? They just started making something that people love. They started helping on their weddings and events, and I love those stories. But it comes up the question of, how do I find a CPA? Like, what would you recommend for somebody that says, all right, been seeing some growth over the last couple of years, maybe I need to go out and find somebody that I can partner with as a great CPA?
Right. Yeah, that's such a great question. And actually, we got some advice from a couple of floral industry CPAs on what to really look for in a CPA a few years ago, probably more like 5 years ago, that we put in our magazine, and now I want to pull it, get it on our website. You could go to safnow.org the next couple of days and ask for that. But what some things that I recall from that are, word of mouth, ask around is always cool. First. That's for everything, right? Like that's how your customers find you, and that's how you find the services that's how you probably landed with Curate, such a great company, and that's how that's how we all shop around. That said, though, I can actually throw out a couple names that of CPAs that work specifically with the floral industry. I don't know what their book of business looks like. I don't know what their availability is, but I do know they have great reputations. And Ryan, I know both of these individuals. You've been at SAF events with them, and but Derek Meyer with Crockett Myers is one, and Paul Goodman, who's also a CPA and works with lots of florists, is another. And you can just, if the easiest thing, I don't have their contact information handy right now, but you could just go to safnow.org, and on our live chat, just ask for their information, and someone on our team can get that to you.
Perfect. And SAF has a great live chat, by the way. I saw y'all instituted that last year, I think it was, or a year and a half ago or something. A couple
years ago, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first time seeing it on your site, and I was like, they get back with you very quick. So definitely jump on there on SAF and ask them for those references. A couple things that I hear a lot from florists that you want to think about when you're looking for a CPA is somebody who understands wire service accounting, which is really, really hard to find in a local CPA. There's like this entire kind of accounting, and it's not anything new. It's just a little more complicated. And that's if you do retail, right? So if you do retail, you want to understand that. And the second thing I see from the event side is people who understand event accounting. And this is the problem when I book an event in November the 1st of 2019, but then it's for July the 6th of 2020, that gets moved to July the 7th of 2021. Somebody who understands that cadence, when are you supposed to be paying taxes? When is it taxable to you? So those are a couple things that I typically recommend too, as well as you're doing it. And if not, maybe your local CPA doesn't know that information, you have to make sure they're able to study up on it and be able to find that out for you. Right.
That is such great advice. And you're absolutely right. I've heard a lot of florists say that as well. I mean, sometimes, you're more than likely, unless you use someone who's been working with a lot of florists, where they won't know that piece. And we actually published a piece in SAF's Floral Management a number of years ago. I know we still have it. You could definitely ask for this on our website. But it's about, it was literally something that you can hand to your accountant to explain to them how wire services work.
Nice. That's so awesome.
Because they need to. It's so specific. So
right.
So yeah, you can ask about that too.
Makes sense. So a couple more questions here. We just got this one in. It's how do I apply for loan forgiveness after I've gotten the funds? What does that process look like?
Well, first you wait for that to open up for those for that forgiveness process to be established. I remember last time around, it took a while. And it was also, where the bank had enough information that they could give you, where they could say, yeah, here's how you apply for forgiveness, and your banker's going to want to understand how that works. But once it is put out there, then, it is available. It's simply working with your banker to provide all of the appropriate information. So you're going to need to show proof of how you used, a paper trail of how you used the money, that, you used it for payroll, that you used it for, up to 60% for payroll, or more, and that you use no more than 40% for non-payroll issues. And so you're going to need to be showing your receipts and some kind of paper trail for that.
Well, I will say as well, if anyone out there is a Curate user, our team is committed to helping you. Like if you need to get an invoice from Curate, because we do qualify as a forgivable expense, which is another reason I was super excited, in my car after doing that little float thing, was like, that's so cool that so many of our companies, so many people we've talked to said, I want to invest in my business. I have downtime, but I just can't afford it right now. And so it's really an opportunity to invest back in your business. And so for those out there who are Curate customers, just message into our customer service team. We'd be glad to be able to pull you an invoice in any particular way that your accountant needs it, to make sure that you're able to get any of those expenses that do qualify actually forgiven. And on top of that, something else that we're doing, and I feel good, about 2 hours ago, I wasn't sure whether we could announce it or not. We are bringing on a full-time team member for the next few months to just answer people's questions. And again, we'll give the caveat, we're not an accountant, but we want to make sure that so many people have disqualified themselves. We're just going to encourage you, right? Apply for this, right? And we're going to be bringing on this full-time person, and they're not here yet. It might be next week or the week after before we get everything rolling, but we're going to put up a phone number for customers as well. For even if you're not a Curate customer, you're just a florist who's been affected by this. We at least have an FAQ blog post. We want to have a real person that can take some of these questions out that maybe you can't ask Kate right now because there's too many questions in there. So I do want to encourage everybody who's watching this to look out for that, because there just has never been something like this in the industry. And we want to invest everything we can at Curate to make sure that every person that's eligible has the opportunity and information that they need to talk to their CPA, to talk to their bank. And most importantly, what I'm seeing, just be encouraged, right? Just like, I'm going to try this. 2020 is behind me. We're in a new year. Let's get up the gumption and do this.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. I'm so glad that you're putting this message out there, Ryan, because this is really going to help our industry recover for this. For people whose business has been primarily on daily sales,
right.
You know, they haven't necessarily experienced some of the same losses as businesses that rely a lot on events. And you know, we want to see the whole industry recover and as many people get these
right.
as possible.
Exactly. To that point, what have you seen in the conversations you've had? And I know this goes back to our retail. So this is a Ryan question. I'm submitting my own question here. Of those customers that you've worked with that are doing retail, what have you seen the impact of COVID versus maybe those that do events? Like maybe not like who qualifies, just what has COVID done to those different groups?
Right, in general. Yeah, so for the retailers that are primarily focused on everyday business, if they had a really solid web presence, they actually have done very, very well because
Really?
because all of the purchasing went online and they
right.
were well prepared for that. And so generally speaking, they will not qualify for this round
right.
that's happening right now because they might not be able to show a business loss. They had really strong Mother's Day days that continued through the summer. People were really seemed to just like appreciate the importance of our industry's product and connecting people
right.
and healing and
people still love flowers.
Yeah. And so so people did, a lot of businesses did very well. If you had trouble staffing though, there were a lot of people that in those first few months prior to Mother's Day, they just weren't sure if they could be open. So they
right.
decided to close, and for various reasons. And if you were closed for more than a week or two through the spring, it was tough to bounce back from that because you had to figure out it puts you at a disadvantage than those businesses that decided based on their interpretation of the closure of the closures that, hey, I'm going to stay open. I'm going to keep my business open. I think I fit with what they're saying and I'm going to just keep open, and my staff's at home. We're taking orders over the phone, and and so the businesses that stayed open were better positioned. And so generally speaking, with those businesses who could stay open, they've done well. But that's not to say that all retail did well. I mean, there's definitely plenty that have not. We have not seen the fall off that we feared we would see back in late March, meaning that many, retail businesses with lots of everyday business would possibly go out of business. I mean, I'll tell you, internally on our team, we were really scared for our industry. We're thinking, how is our industry going to get through this? That was very early on. But as we saw people coping on the non-event side, we didn't have the fall off, where we would see it as if we have a lot of SAF members having to drop because they've gone out of business, and we just didn't see that. Very, very small handful of that. I'm really happy to report. But the same train that whole time is thinking about the people in our industry with events and how they were going to get out of this. And also businesses, of course, there's some shops that have a huge percentage of sympathy sales.
Right.
And memorial work, and that business fell off a lot too. They also had to really work to figure out how to replace that business.
Right.
So,
That makes a lot of sense. Well, one thing I want to say, and we have a couple more questions, but I do want to say this. I know in the event industry and a lot of the people who may be watching this, you may have heard about SAF before and you just wanted to learn more information about it, or maybe you just haven't signed up yet. As things start coming back and as you're making more investments in your business, you really need to consider becoming a member of SAF. They provide so many incredible resources. They're last year was my first year going to Congressional Action Days. So they're literally going, into senator's office and representative's office and talking to them about the importance of this industry and investing back in this industry. So again, in the event space, I know there's a lot of people like my wife and I who started an event company out of our basement. We grew it, renovated a building, had a storefront, but we only did events. But we never were really involved in SAF until the last couple of years of our business. And that's a piece I really want to encourage everybody. Definitely get involved in SAF. Start going on their webpage, even if you can't, afford a membership with them yet. Start looking at their resources because it does create a lot of value for your company. And I know that based on what I've seen in the last couple of years, they're putting a heavier focus on event florists and on these people that are creating this incredible new segment of our industry in a unique way. Kate, if somebody wants to become an SAF member, what do they need to do?
Well, you can just go on the website and I would imagine you'd have some questions about what you would get. And you can just ask any of us, just ask via live chat if you wanted to do that. And then you can join through the website. There's a way you can join. And we do have a category for event only florists as well. Sure. So we have different categories. SAF also, connects you with suppliers in the industry. We have grower members, manufacturers, wholesalers, brokers, drop shippers, so we cover really the whole industry, but we would love to talk to you more about what you do. So thank you for that. And
sure.
And you can, if you don't want to fully join, which would open yourself up to all of our products and services, you could always just kind of test us out, attend one of our events. I mean, SAF members attend a lot of our events for free, but they're paid. We've got some really fun, interesting events coming up, and one that's focused purely on plants and growing your plant business, your house plant business, which is so huge. So keep an eye out for that. You could just test out one of our events and see what it's like, and that peer-to-peer connection that you probably enjoy and look for, wherever you can definitely get that through SAF too, just by attending. So.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. That's a great suggestion. A couple more questions here that we got from some of the participants here and then, if any more come in, we'll try to get them, but we are coming up on time here. These are two different questions, but I'm gonna go ahead and combine them into one for you. The question is, first off, do you have to use the same bank for your second draw as your first? And the second question is, I think very much related, can I submit multiple PPP applications? Can I go to a couple different banks and submit multiple PPP applications?
Oh, interesting.
How does that bank to me relationship work?
Right. Okay. So first, you don't have to use the same bank for, if you used bank A for the first round, you don't have to use bank A for the second round. That's really up to you.
Okay.
And that second question is interesting. That's not one I had thought about on the surface. I do not think you can submit two different applications at the same time though.
Okay.
I think your chance of getting it is, it's really, it's part of it is about your relationship with your banker. And so, yeah, they're submitting it to the SBA on your behalf. And I don't think you can do two.
Okay, cool. Perfect. I know, and probably the person asking this wasn't necessarily saying, hey, can I get two? But it does make sense.
Right.
I know myself, a week before it opened last time for Curate, I was trying to fill out all I didn't even have the right forms yet, but I was filling out every form I could fill out to send to my banker so we didn't miss out. And so I know a lot of people are sort of in that same mindset. It's like, hey, I'll do everything I have to do and more to make sure I get it this time. So thanks.
And maybe what you can do is start with the banker that you think you have the most likelihood of getting it through and try and get a sense from them on, when do you think you can get this to the SBA? You can kind of interview your banker about it in a way, kind of test them out and say, here's my goals for this on timing. Can you work with me on that? And gosh, I heard some stories about, bankers that literally were working over the weekend for it. You submitted the information on a Friday. They had it turned into the SBA on Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah, some banks, these are worked very hard on that first round, and hopefully this will be the same.
That's awesome. So one last question that I'm seeing here is, what if I just close my business because the loss was so great? Is this an option to get funds to try one last effort to save my business?
Right. I think if you can show, it sounds like you'd be able to show that loss, that year-over-year loss from 2020 to 2019. So just because your business is closed right now, that would not, it would still apply. You still have a story to tell there to your bankers. So I would definitely apply in that case.
Okay, perfect. Well, everybody, we're going to be putting up the link in this webinar, so you can be able to have a link to our blog post. We're going to post this webinar on that blog post, as well as some additional information that we just got from Kate as we went through this. So definitely check that out. And if you have any additional questions, or if we can help out at all, check that out. We are going to be continuing to introduce more and more resources on this, because again, this is finally something that seems like that Congress was listening to the event community and event florists who are really struggling and going through a hard time right now. So definitely check that out. Definitely go to safnow.org. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, sweet. So go to safnow.org, check out SAF because they're a great program. They help out florists and they really advocate on our behalf. And this webinar wouldn't have been possible had they not been sending out email blasts, like letting people know about impacts that were happening in the government. So Kate, any other final thoughts about that people may want to know about SAF, or any final thoughts?
Well, I hope that you'll visit our website and you can get to know us and we can get to know you. And I really do hope that you'll be reaching out to your local banker about this.
For sure.
And share your stories with us too.
Yes.
We want to hear them.
Please do. If you qualify for it and this webinar made an impact, like, that's so encouraging to hear those stories. And so please share those stories. We want to make sure that you're able to make it in 2021. We ran some numbers for our team internally of new inquiries that are coming in, and we're seeing an incredible surge in new inquiries and new proposals people are sending out. So we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. The revenue's not there yet, but the number of events and number of inquiries that are coming in are really positive. So we really want to encourage everybody that there's some opportunity here. We don't know exactly what it looks like, but make sure you take every opportunity like this. And most of all, thanks so much, Kate, for joining us and for being a part of this.
It was really my pleasure. And I'm glad to hear that you're hearing positive news on that front, Ryan. And one other thing I just thought of as a resource, and you probably have this on your site as well, but if you want to just check out what the loan looks like for first-time appliers or second-time appliers, we've got those links. You can ask for them on live chat as well, and you might have them as well. But if you just want to kind of see what it looks like, regardless of whether you're a first-time or second-time, just ask for them on our live chat.
That's perfect. And those are the applications for them? Okay, right. Very cool. Yeah, so just go to safnow.org and they'll get on the live chat and they can give you the direction to what that first year or second year application looks like, or second time, first time, second time.
Great.
Well, cool. Thanks so much, Kate, for hopping on here. Thanks everybody for tuning in.